Hello everybody, this is Yoko's Anime Reactions, and let me see, we are at Volume 3, Part 1. So yeah, let us start. And this is right after mine collapsed at the end of Volume 2. Prologue. Mine has finally succumbed at the Gilberta Company. Prepare a room and a magic tool, said the messenger sent by the guildmaster who was in the Merchants Guild. Frida's light brown eyes narrowed sharply. I knew this day would come, she thought, as she looked up at the butler beside the messenger and ordered him to begin preparing immediately. I believe that my grandfather will have sent a messenger to the Gilberta Company as well. It will not take long for Benno to arrive here of mine. Let us be as ready for them as we can. I will enter grandfather's room myself. Frida touched the thin chain that hung from her neck at all times and pulled it up. Attached were 2 keys. One was the key to her grandfather's room, and one was the key to the safe within it. With her attendant at her side, Frida entered her grandfather's room and opened the tightly locked safe within. Inside were the magic tools that he had purchased from nobles using the full extent of his fortune. Originally there had been 10, and now there were only a few. They had been necessary to save Frida's life from the devouring, the same sickness mine had. Her grandfather had used these tools to buy time while he used his connections as a widely influential merchant to eventually secure an agreement with a certain noble, saving her life in the process. But it was impossible to tell when a noble might change their mind. The leftover tools might one day be necessary to save Frida's life once again. Frida, touching the bracelet on her wrist given to her by the noble, closed her eyes. Are you certain about this, my lady? Jut spoke to Frida, having sensed her slight hesitation. Frida sliced away her brief bout of indecision and reached inside the safe. Quite certain. Mine is the first friend I've ever had, after all. If a magic tool is the price for getting her to join our store, then so be it. No, she is not joining your store. I'm sorry, but she's not. The necklace-shaped magic tool in her hands was so old that it would likely fall apart if handled improperly. No matter how much money you offered to a noble, the only magic tools they would ever sell to commoners were similarly old and on the verge of breaking. The nobles were ripping them off for sure, but it was that or death. Mine will understand. Mine had created a new kind of hairpin, one sewn from thread. There was no mistaking that she had designs for many other new products in her head. She was a veritable golden egg, so valuable that the Gilberta Company, one with a sharp eye for profit, rapidly rising in status and wealth within Ehrenfest, would temporarily register her just to secure their hold on her. Frida wanted that golden egg fiercely. Her senses were screaming at her to get mine on her side immediately. However, her heart wasn't filled only with greed. Mine was indeed Frida's first friend, a girl her age, sick with the same disease and working towards the same career. Frida wanted mine by her side. She wanted for them to support each other even after she was forced to leave and live in the nobles' district. She wanted that with all her heart. If mine wanted to survive, she would have to form a contract with a noble just as Frida had. The Gilberta Company would be no help with that, but the guildmaster of the Merchants Guild would. If mine were to join them, they would be able to secure a more favorable agreement for her. If mine is staying with Benno out of gratitude, we need merely make her feel more grateful for us. Saving her life will do just that. It would be nice if that gratitude alone were enough to make mine switch sides, but humans' emotions were not changed so easily. In which case, she just needed to remove her other options. Frida would make as many plans as it took to get her hands on what she wanted. My grandfather told Benno that each of these was worth a small gold and 2 large silvers. But in truth, they are worth 2 small golds and 8 large silvers. Benno had said that mine could pay for them, but will she still be able to if the price is so much higher? What will you do if she cannot pay? Murmured Jut in a neutral tone. Frida smiled. She will need to join the Alchemist Company. Even a large gold in losses will be worth mine's employment. Oh, great. So you're going to essentially force her to join if she can't finish paying. Is Benno going to pay for her? Discussing the devouring with Frida. The feeling of being swallowed by heat and slowly devoured was familiar to me. I focused my mind as much as I could, just like last time, to try and resist it. I haven't even made a book yet. Come on! But despite mimicking what I had done in the past to survive, there was simply too much heat this time. No matter how hard I pushed, it just pushed back harder. I kept on finding a way swiping away at the heat with as much courage as I could muster, when suddenly it started getting sucked away in a certain direction. The devouring heat around me started swooshing away, like a vacuum cleaner was sucking it up. All right, get out of here! I was so amused by the shrinking heat that I shooed it away with my hands like a dog, pushing more into the vacuum cleaner, which suddenly I heard a large snap. Immediately the heat stopped leaving me. No matter how hard I pushed, it just bounced back. Did I break the vacuum cleaner? Did I maybe do something really bad just now? Oh no! For a moment I watched and reeled in horror within the greatly reduced fog of heat. Naturally, there was nobody to tell me what had happened. I was all alone, but I was also alive and can think about it later. It felt as if there was about half as much devouring heat as before. It wasn't too hard to push the diminished heat into me and put a lid on it. I packed it all tight inside of me like stuffing something into a cardboard box and pushing it into a closet. When I was finished, I felt immense relief and noticed my mind slowly rising out of the depths. Where am I? When I opened my eyes, I found myself in a world I didn't recognize. First of all, it was dark. I thought for a moment that it was just that the sun had set, but it was only dark around my head. I could see light filtering in by my feet, which helped my visions adjust, and eventually I could see that I was lying in a bed with dark green curtains hung all around it. The curtains by my feet were pulled to be half open. Basically, I was in a canopy bed with thick drapes about half a foot or so away from the sides of the bed that were meant to block light and prying eyes. Only a rich person could afford so much cloth for something like this. Oh wait, did I reincarnate as a noble this time? The bed itself was of a much higher quality than my old one, too. It wasn't stuffed with straw. It was made of something soft and had a warm sewn sheet on top of it with a warm blanket, too. Both felt nice to the touch. Honestly, this bed was just incredibly comfy. In my Arano days, I had slept in a spring bed with a down-filled quilt or comfy blanket depending on the season. But a year of poverty had changed my standards completely. In fact, it honestly felt weird that straw wasn't poking me from beneath the sheets and flying out everywhere as I rolled around in bed. Straw beds are warm too. Eventually you get used to fleas and bed bugs biting you. Eventually. But it's been a long time since I slept in a bed that felt this nice. I want to sleep even more now. The bed I slept in with Tuli was narrow enough that I had to be careful not to roll into her. But this one was wide enough that I could roll around as much as I wanted. I rolled to one side and saw a chair and a small table with an unlit candle beside the bed. There was nothing in this room I recognized. Or there wasn't at first, until I noticed something. My hands and hair were my own. I grabbed some hair and held it in front of my eyes, which allowed me to confirm that I was still mine. Well, I guess I didn't reincarnate again. There goes my theory about where this place is. I searched my memories to try and remember what had happened before I fell unconscious, which reminded me that Benno had sent a messenger to the Guildmaster before I passed out. I guess this is the Guildmaster's house then. I remembered that he had magic tools that could do something about the devouring heat, and that Benno had made a deal with him, so this was definitely the Guildmaster's house. That explained why everything was so fancy. Excuse me, is anybody there? My body was too heavy for me to sit up, but I wanted to get a grasp on my surroundings. Still at the edge of the bed, I reached out and pulled the curtains a bit. They wavered, and a woman who must have heard me passed through them. Please wait just a moment. She left at that and left. Unable to move and still confused, I remained wrapped in the blankets. My body steadily warmed up and my eyes began to droop. Oh no, I'm sleeping again. As I started drifting off once more, I heard the door open and shut. Then heard footsteps coming my way. I snapped back awake like a seasoned slacker reacting to their teacher's footsteps. The curtains rustled and Frida entered with a lit candle, shining on her light rosy hair. Have you awakened mine? How much do you remember about what happened? Frida set the candle on the stand and sat on the chair by the bed. I tried to sit up so we could talk, but Frida gently pushed me back down. The heat must have put an enormous burden on your body. Please rest. Thank you, but I feel like I'll fall asleep mid-sentence if I keep lying down, so... I got up and sat cross-legged as Frida smiled and shook her head, telling me not to push myself. Okay, how much do I remember? I remember up until the heat burst out in Benno's store and swallowed me up. It was so much of it I was being overwhelmed, and then it all got sucked away somewhere. Did you do that, Frida? The heat had never been sucked away like that before. She likely used one of those magic tools Benno was talking about to save me, which meant an expensive magic tool had probably been destroyed in the process. Yeah, that was the snap you heard. I felt the blood drain from my face, and in contrast, Frida nodded several times with a warm smile. That is mostly correct. I packed as much heat of yours as I could into the old magic tool. It broke due to that, but I imagine it took much of your devouring heat with it. How do you feel? Great. I feel a lot better. But aren't magic tools really expensive? I asked, my face pale. Frida informed me of the price with an extremely amused smile. Indeed, the one that just broke was worth 2 small golds, and 8 large silvers. Benno said you would be able to afford that, but I wonder if that's truly the case. That pretty much confirmed that Benno knew the price of the magic tool when he paid me for extra information on the Rinsham. The price he paid would be too much of a coincidence otherwise. Wait, didn't he offer to pay 2 small golds at first? That wouldn't have been enough. Did he think I would make up for it with paper seals? Feeling some degree of unease towards Benno's actions, I looked at Frida and nodded. I'll pay. So you do have enough then. Then you've escaped me once again. Frida opened her eyes wide, then pouted a little with frustration. If you had been unable to afford it, we would have had you register with the Offmar Company rather than the Gilberta Company. Grandfather told Benno that the magic tool would cost a small gold and 2 large silver, so I thought for sure you wouldn't have enough. It seems that Benno thought one step ahead of us. Good job me for turning down the 2 small golds. And Benno, the best decision you ever made was raising the price just high enough that it would cover this. A day I join a store that lays trash for me in life-threatening situations is the day my fragile self succumbs to sheer anxiety. I patted my chest in relief, and Frida got a serious look in her eyes. If I may use an example, that magic merely sucks some water out of an overly full cup. There is still water in the cup, waiting to be refilled, and as you grow older, the overall amount of water will increase. I nodded. Half a year ago, it was worse than a year ago. A month ago, it was worse than half a year ago. Now it was worse than it was a month ago. A devouring heat was getting increasingly difficult to manage, and I was only fine now thanks to the magic tool. There was less heat within me now than before, but I knew better than anyone that it could refill and get worse over time. The problem is that the bigger the cup gets, the faster the water increases. I can imagine it will only take a year at best before it's filled up entirely again. My senses told me that she was telling the truth, likely due to her own past with the devouring. I nodded, and Frida continued on in a flat tone, her expression looking as if she was intentionally cutting out her emotions. Therefore mine, think well and choose. Would you rather live and die as a noble slave, or would you rather live with your family and rot away in a year's time? I blinked in surprise, not understanding her, and Frida gave a troubled smile. Magic tools are generally held only by nobles. My grandfather purchased these old, nearly broken ones by fishing through his connections and paying exorbitant sums. But I believe that outside of the ones we own, you won't find any other magic tools for sale. What? A worthless, nearly broken magic tool still costs 2 small golds and 8 big silvers? I opened my eyes wide in surprise, and Frida slowly tilted her head after blinking several times. I believe that is a reasonable price considering it saved your life. A properly working magic tool will run you a price of several large golds. For a commoner with the devouring to survive, they need to sign a contract agreeing to work for a noble in return for a magic tool, and subsequently work the rest of their life as the noble's slave to pay back the debt, explained Frida as if it was just common sense, implying that she had received the exact same explanation several times in the past. Is that what you did, Frida? Frida's expression blossomed into a smile. Indeed. I've already signed a contract with the noble, although I am allowed to live at home until my adulthood ceremony. Upon coming of age, he will take me as his mistress. What, mistress? Do you know what that word means? Hadn't expected to hear such a word from such a cute, pretty little girl. My mouth flashed open and closed like a fish, which made Frida look confused herself. Judging by that reaction, you know what a mistress is? That wasn't a word that most 6 or 7-year-olds knew, and under normal circumstances they would never casually say that they planned to become one themselves. The initial discussions involved me becoming the noble's 2nd or 3rd wife, but an official marriage would be quite complicated due to lines of succession and competition between wives. In particular, my family has more money than a lay noble, so an official marriage would likely lead to undue strife, according to my grandfather. Guildmaster, what kind of things are you telling this kid? I let out a shout, and Frida's expression hardened a little. Mine, I'm saying this for your benefit. Choosing to live means choosing to live in the world of nobility. If you do not maneuver carefully, you will be killed for other reasons, even if magic tools save your life. Information is critical for protecting your life. Choosing not to heed these warnings will only put yourself in danger. I'm sorry. I am the fool, it's me. As always, my innocent Japanese brain was not equipped to deal with the challenges presented to me. This was an entirely different world from the one where I lived in relaxed peace. I apologized immediately, and Frida forced a smile. Do not worry. Our situations are fairly out of the ordinary. My grandfather is the guildmaster of the Merchants Guild, and through his work has connections with many nobles. He was capable of selecting ideal circumstances for me thanks to those seeking favors, help, and so on. Ideal circumstances? I tilted my head in confusion, and Frida beamed a sincere smile, clearly glad that I had asked. There is a store waiting for me in the nobles district. I am not being given just a floor at my master's estate or something of the like, but rather an entire store to call my own. My family will have to fund it all, but I am quite looking forward to doing the business I had given up on with my devouring. Frida smiled like a blooming flower, eyes shining with excitement for her future. I see. You're not sad that you don't get to marry someone you love? Dear me, mine. What are you saying? My father would decide upon my master regardless of any other factors. Even if I were given choices, they would be carefully selected choices and I would have no true agency. Right. What's common sense to me isn't common sense here. I forgot that fathers tend to pick marriage candidates here. It all has to do with which families know which families. My family is quite satisfied that I'll be establishing a base of operation for them in the nobles district. And although 30% of my profit will be going to my master, the store will be physically distant from him to such an extent that I will avoid much hassle that would otherwise pose significant problems. That was the best deal possible. Although I knew it was standard for this world, seeing Frida speak of her future as a mistress with an excited smile made me feel conflicted. My family had leverage with nobles in the form of financial support, but does yours? You might face a future where my position as a mistress is outright enviable. Think hard, think well, and choose a life that you can live without regrets. Ah, I understand. I'm sick with the devouring too. I need a noble's protection just to survive. Frida's telling me to plan ahead for the next time when the devouring heat becomes too much for me. I'll need to choose whether to become a noble slave or die off my family. Thank you. I'll think hard about what I want to do. I'm glad you told me all this. Certainly. I imagine you have no other associates with this knowledge. If you ever have any concerns about your devouring, feel free to consult me. I believe I might be the only one who will ever truly understand what you're going through. Devouring was such a rare disease that few knew about it. It felt nice to finally have someone I could talk to about it. Thanks for all your help. I think I need to get home now, though. I could tell the room was getting steadily darker. The sun would likely be setting soon. My family would worry if I didn't get home soon. I tried to get up since we had finished our conversation, but Frida once again gently pushed me back into bed. Fret not, you may continue to rest. Your family just saw you during their last visit. Last visit? Wait, how long have I been out? I blinked in surprise at the implication that a day had passed. Frida put a hand to her cheek and thought for a moment. You were brought here yesterday at noon, and the sun is about to set today. You must have been quite exhausted, considering how long it took you to waken, even after your fever fell. We decided that you may stay here until the baptism festival the day after tomorrow, regardless of when you wake up. It seemed that a lot had gone down between Benno the Guildmaster and my family while I was asleep. Just imagining how my family reacted to hearing about me passing out made my stomach hurt. Judging by his attitude today, I imagine that Lutz will be visiting right in the morning tomorrow, perhaps with your family in tow. Close your eyes again and rest for today. Thank you, Frida. Be sure to make a firm decision before speaking of this with your family. And if you feel better tomorrow, shall we make the sweets as promised? Frida stood up and quietly left with the candle, leaving my visions in darkness. I mulled over what Frida had said and thought hard about my future, but my body desired rest, and my eyes started to droop despite the fact I was sitting up. I snuggled into bed beneath the covers and, without resisting the comfy covers for even a second, fell asleep on the spot. I wish I could do that. I wish I could fall asleep that quickly. Making cake with Frida. The next morning, I left the bed for the first time and looked at the room I was using. Wow, it's like a hotel! The canopy bed was in the center of a decently sized room, a simple bedroom with just a table, 3 chairs, and a fireplace. But the floor had a thick carpet covering it, and there were curtains over the wavy glass window for privacy. The room may have looked simple, but it was clear that a lot of money had been spent on it. Also, there was a servant girl standing by the chairs near the door. Good morning. You may wash your face here. I will guide you to the dining room when you are ready. Okay. She handed me a clean cloth and showed me where warm water had been prepared for me to wash my face with. The perfect hospitality honestly made me a little nervous. Forgive my rudeness, but as your normal clothes would look improper in this home, we have prepared a different outfit for you to wear. She took out an outfit that appeared to be one of Frida's hand-me-downs. My heart raced at the opportunity to wear clean clothing not made of patchwork for the first time in a long time. Then she brushed my hair for me, but I put my hair stick in myself. The servant looked at the stick curiously but said nothing and promptly finished getting me ready. By the time we reached the dining room, Frida and the guildmaster were already waiting for me. I first had to thank the guildmaster for all he had done for me. Thank you very much, guildmaster. I appreciate your kindness and hospitality. He responded to my gratitude with a nod. Frida briskly walked up to me and touched my forehead, then my neck. Her cold hand sent a chill through my body that made me flinch. But Frida ignored that. Good morning, mine. I see that your fever's gone down. Morning, Frida. I feel great, like so much better than I did before. Oh, she was taking my temperature. I thanked her with a smile as she returned with a happy one of her own. We walked to the table together, and the guildmaster let out a humph. It's good that you're well again, but don't expect us to sell another magic tool. We're saving them for Frida in case something happens to her. Grandfather! He's not wrong, Frida. He bought all of them for your sake. I'm just thankful that he let me use even a single one of them. The guildmaster had obtained the tools by using all of his connections and his wealth. I had paid for them, sure, but the fact that I was even given the chance to do so at all was nothing short of a miracle. Mine, you would do well to think hard about your future. He gave me a sharp look that felt like it pierced right through me, and I nodded with a tiny gulp. In any case, we need to report this to your family, said Frida. Is there anything we want to tell the messenger before we send him? The word messenger threw me for a loop, but then I realized that of course the guildmaster and Frida wouldn't go to my place themselves. Sending a messenger was normal for them. I turned to face said messenger. I want to thank Frida for all her help, but so could you tell them to bring some simple all-in-one shampoo with them? We still call the Ren Sham by its full name in my place, but it wasn't an easy phrase to memorize. The messenger's face kind of scrunched up as he struggled to remember. All symbol what? Forgive me, but could you state that once more? It's a hair cleaning liquid. They should understand you if you just say Ren Sham. Thank you for doing this. Hair cleaning liquid, Ren Sham. Understood. I saw the messenger off after making sure he knew where I lived, then noticed the guildmaster looking at me while stroking his beard. I got the feeling that I had seen a similar foreboding smile in the past. Uh-oh. I think he might be wanting to get his hands on the Ren Sham, but that's Benno's property now, so he can't. Frida, mine certainly owns a lot of interesting things, doesn't she? She does. I'm quite disappointed we missed the opportunity to obtain her knowledge in exchange for the magic tool. It was scary being surrounded by the two of them in a situation where I had no allies. I felt like a rabbit in a lion pit. You know, I think you'll go ahead and pay for the magic tool with money. Fearing that thing would make up some excuse to raise the price, I immediately tapped my guild card against the guildmaster's and finished paying him. He actually paid you that much? Curse you, Benno, murmured the guildmaster in frustration. It seemed that Benno had managed to weave through the guildmaster's web of traps with outstanding guile. Good job, Benno, you saved me. Eat as much as you like, mine. Absolutely. I couldn't stop smiling if I tried, 'cause, we were eating white bread for breakfast. White bread, made out of flour. I could put as much honey as I wanted on it, too, which was crazy. After having my fill of the sweet and tasty bread, I went after the soup. It had a nice salty flavor, but it felt like the broth was lacking in vegetable flavor. They were definitely boiling them and then tossing out the water. That destructive practice was thoroughly ingrained in the culture here. But the eggs and bacon tasted good, and they even had fruit for dessert. It was a hearty breakfast fit for Japan, and I loved it. Breakfast at the guildmaster's place was great. I elegantly picked away at my food as the guildmaster looked at me with a furrowed brows. Who taught you those manners, mine? Nobody. This is just how I eat. I had read several books on manners and experimented in restaurants back in my Irano days, but I hadn't actually studied them anywhere, so I wasn't lying. The guildmaster's brows furrowed deeper, and it was clear on his face that he was doubting me, but I tried not to worry about it and just finished eating. Worrying about it would only hurt me. The guildmaster left for work after breakfast, and soon Freda and I were informed of visitors. My family had apparently dropped by just to see me before going to work themselves. Mine. Dad started to race towards me, but Mom got in between us and pushed him aside. I'm so glad you've woken up, Mine. I thought my heart was going to stop when Lutz told us you collapsed and Benno's turn were taken to Frida's home. Sorry for worrying you. Frida used to have the same sickness as me, and we needed her help to get me better. I knew for a fact that my mom would pass out herself if I told her that they used a magic tool worth 2 small golds and 8 large silvers on me. Miss Frida, thank you so much. Mom, did you bring the simple all-in-one shampoo to thank her? That was the only thing I could think of that we could use to pay her back, other than money, and since her baptism was tomorrow, now was the perfect time to get her all cleaned up. Though I'm not sure how much she will appreciate this stuff, Tuli. Thanks for saving mine, Frida, said Tuli as she handed Frida a small jar. Frida took it with a smile and curtsied by lowering her hips a little. You're quite welcome. I'm just glad to have helped. We're seriously thankful, said Dad. Lutz said that she was in a pretty bad spot. I don't know how to thank you for saving my daughter. Mine, since you're feeling better already, will you be coming home tonight? Dad's eyes were pleading with me to come home early. I would have said yes, so my family wouldn't have to keep worrying about me, but Frida stood between us with a smile. No, mine will be staying here until my baptism so that we can keep an eye on her in case her condition worsens, as agreed upon yesterday. I would not like for our plans to be changed so suddenly. All right. Thank you for all your help and sorry for the trouble. Mom did a similar curtsy gesture involving lowering her hips, wondering if that was this world's equivalent to bowing. I took a step closer to get a better look when all of a sudden Tuli hugged my head with both arms. We have to go to work now, but don't bother these nice people and do all sorts of weird things like you do at home, okay? I know that, Tuli. I'll come home after the baptism. Good luck at work. My family left quickly, busy as they were, and Lutz came right after as if he had been waiting for them to leave. Heard you finally woke up. How's your fever? Did it really go down? He touched my head and neck just as Frida had, checking to see how hot I felt. His hands were almost unbelievably colder than Frida's. Lutz, your hands are way too cold. Well, I imagine it's probably cold since it's probably gotten cold outside. Sorry. Well, don't worry. I'm better now. For a year at best, right? Lutz, knowing the circumstances of the magic tools and my devouring, frowned to show that he wasn't celebrating just yet. But still, I had been in such a tight spot that even a year felt like a huge relief. I could use that time to think of a bunch of stuff and search for a solution. I'm gonna make a book. Definitely. It's all you ever say, mine, but alright, I'm gonna go tell Benno about this. He was saying yesterday that he might come see you this afternoon. The moment Benno was brought up, Frida's expression morphed into a solid pout. Well, you can't blame him for wanting to check on her. She had been listening to my conversation with Lutz from behind, but that was the last straw. I'm afraid that won't be a good time for us. We'll be busy making sweets at about that time. Isn't that right, mine? I get the feeling that letting Frida and Benno meet right now wouldn't be a good idea. I was the most likely to suffer, and I could already imagine myself sitting helplessly between them as sparks flew into the air. It wouldn't be good. Sorry, Lutz, but could you tell Benno that I'll drop by the store later? Sure, but what are you making? Something new? It seemed that Lutz was more interested in our cooking than in Benno. I laughed and shook my head, and I don't know, we'll have to talk to the chef first. Oh my, you won't be deciding yourself, mine, said Frida, confused, but I couldn't plan a recipe without knowing what ingredients and tools were available. Not to mention that if the chef was friendly, we could enlist their help to make more difficult things, but if they were not so friendly, we would have to settle for something simple. Oh, I can't decide on anything without knowing what ingredients and tools they have here. Does the same not apply to Lutz? Frida pursed her lips, not satisfied with my explanation, but Lutz and I lived in similar conditions, eating similar things and using similar tools. It was an entirely different situation from Frida's place. I didn't make anything for Lutz, I just told him the recipes. In Lutz's place, his family used their own ingredients and made the food themselves. Right, Lutz? Yeah, mine's too small and weak to do any cooking herself. We should be done by later afternoon. I'll save some for you if you want to try it out. Really? Heck yeah, count me in. Frida, with her competitive spirit, burning fiercely at Lutz, Lutz glared at the door for a bit after he left and then looked at me unhappily, her cheeks puffing out cutely. You coddle Lutz too much. I don't think so. Really, it's the opposite. He takes care of me way more than he has to, I said, making Frida pout even harder. To be honest, I didn't know why Frida was so unhappy about all this. Oh, 'cause she doesn't have anybody to take care of her besides her servants and the guildmaster. She doesn't have a friend. I faltered a bit, feeling awkward, and Frida shot a pointed finger in my direction. Very well, then, I will take care of you myself. Why? You are my very best friend, but I am not your best friend. It's infuriating. Oh, she's jealous. 'Cause Lutz is her best friend. Wow, what a cutie. I want to poke her puffed out cheeks. Now knowing that Frida's unhappiness was born of jealousy, I couldn't help but giggle a little. Okay, think about it like this. We can do girl things together that I could never do with Lutz. Would that cheer you up? Girl things? Frida tilted her head in confusion. Her main hobby was counting and earning money. Trying to play with dolls together would probably just lead to a discussion about profit margins on toys and the like. That would be fun in its own way, but we didn't have that much time to play together. We could bathe together, wash each other's hair, roll around in bed and talk, all sorts of good things. I couldn't do anything that would let's, right? My, how wonderful. Shall we go to the chef, then, so we can first discuss what sweets we'll bake? Frida took my hand and guided me to the kitchen. Standing there was a plump-looking woman who had seemingly just finished cleaning up after making breakfast. She seemed to be about as old as my mother and resembled Lizz's mom, Carla. Lace, about the sweets today. Yep, yes, you're going to make some with your friend, right? You already mentioned it more times than I can count. May I ask what ingredients we have to work with here? I asked, making Lace raise an eyebrow. Ingredients? Just what are you planning on using? Flour, butter, sugar, and eggs. We don't have any sugar in my home, so we usually use jam or honey as a substitute, but maybe you have some here? The kind of sweets one can make varied heavily based on available ingredients and tools. It was a good reason why I mainly just made pancakes and French toast variants at Lizz's place. We've got sugar. Really? Wow. Also, do you have an oven? Yep, can't you see it? Lace shifted a bit and a large firewood oven came into view. My heart bloomed with growing anticipation. Oh no, girl, you're gonna make Benno mad at you. I looked up at Lace, squeezing my hands tightly in front of my chest. That means you have pans for cooking in an oven too, right? Do you have scales? Of course we do. Lace shrugged as if telling me not to ask questions with obvious answers, and I honestly wanted to jump for joy. Yes, that means we can probably bake a cake. Recipe after recipe for sweets came to mind. There was more than a few recipes I had memorized down to the exact measurements. Wait, I know the recipes, but I don't think people around here measure weight in grams. What should I do? I had forgotten this crucial fact in my excitement, but ingredients and tools weren't enough to make sweets. You needed to measure the ingredient down to the wire. I had made the Peru cakes in Lizz's place like normal pancakes, going by instinct and thus getting pancakes of different sizes and thickness each time. That was fine since the boys just wanted quantity, not quality, but real baking needed precise and accurate measurements. Frida was letting me use an entire firewood oven here. I couldn't let myself fail. Trial and error was out of the question. Is there anything I could make that doesn't need precise measurements? I tried thinking of sweets I can make without knowing any units of measurement, and soon remembered something that I had read about in a book on French confectionaries. I'm gonna make pound cake. Pound cake in French was quatre quarts, which meant 4 quarters. It was a cake made using 4 ingredients of the same amount: flour, eggs, butter, and sugar. I could make pound cake without any precise measurements as long as I had a scale to weigh each ingredient. I've never heard of that. What kind of food is it? It's a sweet made from mixing together an equal amount of flour, eggs, butter, and sugar. You're actually going to make something like that? Lace's eyes widened in surprise so much that I faltered and backpedaled immediately. Well, I don't have to if it's not okay. It's fine, but are you sure you know what you're talking about here? Yes. We set up a time for our sweet making, and Lace started preparing the oven, so we left the kitchen and started hunting for aprons to wear while cooking. Frida had never helped with the chores before, and thus had never worn an apron. Eventually, a maid found 2 for us. We put them on, wearing large handkerchiefs folded on our heads to hold back our hair. We were ready to go. Oh no, Benno is gonna get on your case on this thing. You shouldn't have sold her that recipe. Now they're gonna be able to make it. Page. Huh? What the fuck? 308 of 4,926. Huh? Once it was time to cook, we returned to the kitchen. Upon seeing us, Lace burst out in surprised laughter. Goodness, man, looks like you're pretty enthusiastic about this. Indeed, I'll be doing the cooking myself this time. Naturally, I didn't have a cake pan, so I decided to use a small circular metal pot instead. Okay, how about you share this recipe of yours with me now? I won't know how to make it unless you go through the steps. Okay, first we measure the ingredients and heat the eggs and sugar until they're warm as our body temperature. And how are we going to do that? I was planning on filling a larger bowl with hot water and putting the pan in it. Ah, water heating. Alright then, we should heat the water before measuring the ingredients then. In a world without gas stoves and such, hot water couldn't be made so quickly. That was obvious, but since I had never made sweets in this world before, it was hard for me to notice ahead of time. The most important thing is that the sugar and eggs are mixed together thoroughly to the point of foaming a bit. Once that's happening, put in the flour and mix it all together with a chopping motion. Then put in melted butter and stir gently so as not to break the foam. Melt the butter, alright. We start baking once it's all mixed together. That's right. Lace, having gotten a grasp on the recipe, took out a scale and put it on top of the counter. The next step was measuring the lined up ingredients. She taught me how to use the scale while Frida and I tried to balance the ingredients on them. Then she started heating the water in the meantime. We measured the eggs and sugar first, then Lace mixed them together with fervor as the water beneath heated it all up. The foaminess of the mixture would change the size and flavor of the cake for the better. Meanwhile, Frida and I measured the butter. Once everything's measured, we put the butter on the sides of the pan so the cake would be easier to take out. We smeared butter in the pot, and I decided to sprinkle some flour on top as well. Without cooking paper, this was our next best option. Let's sprinkle flour on it next. It'll be more fluffy if we let lots of air inside. Making sure not to get it all over the counter, Frida and I sifted the flour. In the end, I gave it a 3 sifting passes. My, the eggs used to be yellow, but now they're getting white and bigger too. Frida enviously watched Lace beating the eggs. It was clear she wanted to try beating them herself, so Lace gestured to the bowl and the mixer with a grin. Want to try? Ooh! Frida immediately began beating them with happy enthusiasm, but got tired out and gave up before long. It took a lot of strength to hand-mix cake ingredients. It was too heavy a burden for us devouring girls. Mind, is this about right? It is. Now we can add the flour. I prepared the bowl by sprinkling in a layer of flour, then poured in the rest while using a wooden spatula to separate chunks and mix everything together. You just keep mixing it like this. We'll put the butter in next. Has it melted yet? Yep, I put it next to the hearth while the water was heating up. Lace, could you please take over here? My arms are at their limit. Good grief, neither of you girls got any strength to you. Lace took my place with a grin. She put in the butter and got back to mixing. Well, they have the devouring. Of course they're not going to have any strength. Frida brought over the pot we were using as a cake pan and watched us finish the mixture, eyes gleaming. Once we pour the mixture into the pot, we need to pick it up and kind of drop it to push out the extra air. We don't want too much. The pot was heavy enough that I left all that to Lace. She picked it up without hesitation, clearly having never expected for a moment that we were able to do it ourselves. Now we just have to bake it in the oven, and we're done. I didn't know how to use wood ovens, so it would be best to leave this step to Lace. She set the pot into the hot, crackling oven and shut it tight. It should finish baking while we're cleaning up, Lace said. While helping Lace clean up in such a clumsy and ineffectual fashion, it would hardly be considered helping. A nice, sweet scent began drifting through the air. It was so cute how Frida was wiggling eagerly in front of the oven, asking whether or not it was ready yet. I can't blame her. Pound cake's good. Not yet, I answered, feeling nervous myself about whether or not we succeeded. We had used a lot of valuable ingredients to make this pound cake, and on top of that, it was the first time Frida and I had made sweets together. Failure just wasn't an option for me. I think I'll check on it. Lace opened the oven and peered inside. The cake had risen nicely, however, the backside of it seemed darker than the front. Lace, looks like the back half of the cake is cooking more. Could you turn it for me? Lace spun the cake around and pushed the pot back in. Personally, I wouldn't stick my hand into that hot oven, even with the thick mitten-esque glove she had. I was moved by the skills and courage it took to be a professional chef. After shutting the oven tightly again, Lace looked down at me. How do you tell when it's done? You could stick a thin, pointy stick made of something like bamboo to check. Do you have something like that? Yeah, but they're for skewering meat. She rummaged to a shelf and produced 2 long iron skewers like the kind you would use to stick your meat and veggies together at a barbecue. I had never used a skewer to check if a cake was done before, so I honestly didn't know how well it would work. That'd poke a huge hole in the cake, but I guess we don't have much of a choice here. I used chopstick to check once in my Urano days, so it should be fine. Lace stuck a skewer in, then pulled it out, revealing some wet dough stuck to it. Looks like it's not cooked on the inside yet. How can you tell? There's a little dough stuck to it, right? It'll be done cooking once the skewer comes out clean. The top of the cake was kind of turning dark brown by the time the inside was cooked, which meant the oven was probably too hot. But unlike the ovens I was used to, it wasn't that easy to control the heat. I would have to rely entirely on the experience and instinct of those trained in those matters. I think I'll be more careful with the oven next time, murmured Lise as she took the pound cake out of it. Once the pot was outside, I could see a fluffy, well-cooked cake inside that looked just like a castelia. Simply amazing. Yep, it sure looks good. The two of them both looked at the finished cake with shining eyes, and I felt an indescribable sense of satisfaction welling up in my chest. These usually taste better if you wrap them in tightly wrung, damp cloths and leave them out for 2 or 3 days, but we should be fine taste testing this one first. Lace chopped the cake into fine slices. I grabbed a piece and tossed it in my mouth. The nice thing about taste testing as a chef is that you get to eat a little before everyone got attracted by the smell. This is exactly what I was going for. Once I was done, Lace, who was very used to taste testing things, did the same thing herself. Frida had been hesitating to put a bit of the cake in her mouth, but after seeing Lace eat some, she hurriedly threw it in. Goodness, 2 pairs of eyes widened in surprise, and Frida and Lace spun around to look at me simultaneously. They had a predatory look to them. Uh-oh. That reminded me of the guildmasters this morning. Uh-oh, and I got the feeling I must have put myself in real danger. It'd probably be smart to flee before they ask me any weird questions. I grabbed Frida's hand. Frida, let's eat this at tea time or after a meal. Now's a good time to take a bath. We hadn't really done much in the way of helping her bake, but due to us sifting our flour, our sleeves were fairly dirty. We had plenty of time, and the sooner I cleaned her up with Rinsham, the better. So with all that said, we left the kitchen. But I stopped in the doorway and turned around, not wanting to forget to thank the chef. Thank you for your help, Lace. Oh, don't tell me there's freaking 4,000 pages to this thing. How far have I gotten on recording? Okay, I hope you guys are excited for more, and I'll see you guys next time.